As the youngest of 11 children, I'm uniquely qualified to shed insight on being an underdog. When you have successful siblings, living in their shadow can be taxing. But it can propel you to new heights. It can motivate you to maximize your talents, dream bigger, and soar higher than you ever imagined. The same can be said about the Shure MV7X. The original MV7 launched with a hefty price tag and a lot of hype. Even so, the product didn't really wow the podcast industry at large. Responding to their fans, Shure re-released the MV7 as the MV7X minus the USB connectivity and the integrated software. By doing this, they were able to lower the price roughly $70. Today, utilizing the power of the Mixcast 4, and if you don't own one, post-production EQ, can the fledgling Shure MV7X unseat its older sibling, podcasting and live streaming's ubiquitous microphone, the Shure SM7B. Keeping this competition fair is not the name of the game today. The MV7X is on an uphill battle against the Shure SM7B. So today I want to do everything I can to make the Shure MV7X sound as close to the Shure SM7B as possible. This is a raw sample of the Shure SM7B. No processing is on the Mixcast 4, and no post-production will be done to this sound sample. This is the Shure MV7X. No processing is on the Mixcast 4, and no post-production will be done to this particular sound sample. I just wanted you to get a feel for how it sounds in comparison naturally to the Shure SM7B. Next, I'll switch back to the SM7B, and then when the MV7X returns, it's going to have a couple of upgrades. Back on the Shure SM7B, still no processing turned on whatsoever. The goal here today is to make the MV7X sound as close as the SM7B as possible. So next I'm going to switch back to the MV7X and I'm going to turn on some processing on the Mixcast 4. Now I've added two things to the MV7X. One is this modified windscreen. If you want to learn more about that, stay tuned. And two, I've turned on the deep tone on the Mixcast 4 in order to try to bring out some of that low end to match its older sibling, the SM7B. How does it sound in comparison to the SM7B right now with that deep tone turned on the Mixcast 4 and this new windscreen that I put together myself? I'll switch back to the SM7B so you can get a good comparison, a good side-by-side. Hopefully you have a good pair of headphones on and you can get a nice side-by-side comparison. Back to the SM7B. Back on the SM7B, how did the MV7X with the deep tone setting of the Mixcast 4 sound in comparison to this right here? I'll be curious to hear your thoughts down in the comments down below. What do you think? Is the MV7X getting closer to the sound of our Shure SM7B with the Mixcast 4's deep tone set on it? Next, I'm going to put the MV7 and the Shure SM7B into some software. I'm going to analyze the waveforms, and then in post-production, I'm going to try to EQ the MV7X to be closer to the sound of the Shure SM7B. As you see, I've opened up a plugin that I like to use to analyze frequencies of recorded audio files. This is the Shure SM7B, and this is what it looks like unprocessed in this plugin. So you'll notice the various frequencies that I'm hitting while using the Shure SM7B. It's registering on this program. I'm going to turn off the Mixcast 4 effects for the MV7X and talk plainly into it, and then try to tweak it in EQ. We'll see how that goes. All right, back on the MV7X. I have the big windscreen on it, the one I modified myself, but I've turned off the deep tone setting on the Mixcast 4, and this is just a plain old recording of the MV7X naturally going through the Mixcast 4 with no processing turned on. So now that you get a sense of what it looks like frequency wise, now I'm going to start adjusting them and see if we can get them to be a little bit closer to the Shure SM7B than it is right at this time. This is the Shure SM7B, and here's how it sounds. This is the Shure SM7B. This is the Shure MV7, and here's how it sounds EQ'd to try to make it sound as close to the SM7B as possible. This is the Shure MV7. This is the Shure SM7B, and here's how it sounds. This is the Shure SM7B. This is the Shure MV7, and here's how it sounds to try to make it sound as close to the SM7B as possible. This is the Shure MV7. This is the Shure SM7B, and here's how it sounds. This is the Shure SM7B. While it's safe to say there's only one Shure SM7B, I thought throughout this competition the MV7X did an admirable job and is a great new addition to podcasting and live streaming. I believe this microphone will carve out its own niche in the space, and there's definitely no shame in that. In the coming weeks and months, I'll be bringing in microphones that I've never used before in that sub $130-ish range. So definitely subscribe to the channel to catch those videos. But what did you think about the MV7X? Let your voice be heard in the comments down below. Thank you for tuning in.